Yehudim ha'izahara v'simcha v'sasam v'ikar lama Yehudim ha'izahara v'simcha v'sasam v'ikar 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 Okay, good Purim, good Yom Tov, good Purim, page 191. Atem yodim rabotai, you know my teachers, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Bunim Pshische Amar, Rabbi Bunim Pshische said, שבין אדם צריך להיות עמוק מאוד כדי להבין את המשמעות של פורים. Person has to be very deep in order to understand the depth of Purim.
Mashmut means depth?
Meaning. Yeah. Meaning. The meaning, yeah. את כל החגים האחרים אתה יכול לעבור איכשהו בהיותך שטחי. All the other holidays you can go through somehow, even if you're just superficial. אבל לא את פורים. But Purim, being superficial is not going to do it. כי פורים הוא ממש עמוק. Purim is a very deep holiday. כולם יודעים, everybody knows, and like I've told you that whenever Reb Shlomo would say everybody knows, we'd look around, nobody knew. It meant that everybody should know. כולם יודעים, everyone knows, שלפי הקבלה, פורים הוא החג הכי קדוש. According to the Kabbalists, Purim is the holiest holiday. וזה מוזר, and that's strange. It's strange. Why? כי לכאורה פורים הוא כמו יום חול. It would seem that Purim is like a weekday. Why? Because mutar la'avod, you're allowed to work on Purim. You're welcome. Mutar la'avod, page 191. Mutar la'avod, you're allowed to work on Purim. מותר ללכת לבנק, you're allowed to go to the bank, מותר להתקשר בטלפון, you're allowed to use the telephone, אבל בפנימיות, but on the inner dimension, אתם יודעים, you know, הרבה פעמים אנשים נראים טובים מבחוץ, we're in the end of the second paragraph. People many times seem to be good on the outside, אבל אתה לא מכיר אותם באמת, but you don't really know them. The Purim, Hakol Pnimi. Purim is all very, very much about the inner aspect, the inner dimension of your being.
It's interesting what when he says the things that you're allowed to do on Purim, Mutar La'avod, I would understand, but with let us to the bank, that's not the first thing I would think about. I would say ride a bus or something like that.
Okay.
But that's not the first thing I would think of.
Okay.
If I had a lot of money.
Well, maybe that's the problem. Okay.
Deep insights.
כולם יודעים, so everyone knows, שחודשי השנה מחולקים ל-12 השבטים. So let's just make that point clear. There's chitzoniyut, there's the external aspect of something, and then there's the pnimiyut, right? So on the chitzoniyut, on the external level, like, you can be a polite person, and it doesn't mean that you're really a good person, right? You can just be, that could be that you're just being polite. And so you can, the problem with our problem in general is that if that very often we don't have a harmony between our external behavior and our inner behavior. Like, for example, you could be religiously observant, but on your inside, it doesn't mean that you're actually into it. You could, on the other hand, somebody, maybe they're not religiously observant, but on the inside they might be thinking about God more than somebody who's doing the mitzvot. So in general, there's a whole issue of being a complete, whole, honest, sincere person is about that your outside and your inside are one. Kulam yadim, everyone knows שחודשי השנה מחולקים ל-12 השבטים. Everyone knows that the 12 months of the year, we've spoken about this, are divided according to the 12 tribes. Chodesh l'chol shevet, every month has its tribe. V'chodesh Adar shayach li-Yosef, and the month of Adar is connected with the tribe of Joseph. Lachen, therefore, לפעמים Adar hu me'ubar. Sometimes the month of Adar is like a leap year, like this year we have 2 Adars, right? Chodesh echad leMenashe, v'chodesh echad leEphraim. And when we have a leap year, so one month is connected with Menashe, and the other one is with Ephraim. And then sometimes when you don't have a leap year, Ephraim and Menashe, Memuchadim Yachad, the 2 tribes of Menashe and Ephraim are combined. So HaChodesh Hazeh Shayach li Yosef. So this month belongs to Yosef. Mordechai ve'Esther hem Yeshevet Binyamin. And Mordechai and Esther are from the tribe of Binyamin. Kulam baneha shel Rachel imenu. So Joseph and Benjamin, they're both the children of our mother Rachel. HaChodesh hazeh, now he hasn't told us what this means yet, but he's just giving you information right now. HaChodesh hazeh, this month, hu gam hatikun shel chet eitz hadat. This is also the month that we're fixing the sin of the tree of knowledge. Ki kishakadosh baruch hu שאל את אדם הראשון אם הוא אכל מהעץ. How do we know that? Because when God asked Adam if he ate from the tree, הוא שאל אותו, he asked him in the following way. He said, Hamin ha'etz. The whole phrase is Hamin ha'etz, did you eat from the tree? Hamin ha'etz. Min means from. Ha makes it a question. Ha min ha'etz, did you eat from this tree? The Gemara Masbira, and the Gemara explains שהאותיות של המילה המין, that the word המין, the letters of the word המין, הם אותיות שמו של המן הרשע. These are the same letters as the name Haman. Right? The Gemara says Haman min haTorah minayin. Where in the Torah do we have an allusion to Haman? And it tells us, where's the allusion found? That in the words, when God says, Hamin ha'etz, did you eat from the tree? So the word Hamin is the same letters as the name Haman, which means to say that Haman the wicked Haman is being connected to the eating from the tree of knowledge. Okay? HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amar L'Adam HaRishon, so God is telling Adam, שכתוצאה מהחטא שלו, that as a result of his transgression of eating from the tree of knowledge, יבוא בעתיד Haman HaRasha, that in the future we're going to have to deal with the wicked Haman. ואנחנו צריכים לתקן את החטא, and we have to fix that transgression of eating from the tree of knowledge, ולמחוק אותו and erase it.
Where does it get למחוק אותו from?
Well, that's what it means to לתקן. To fix it means you make it as if it never happened.
There seems to be many instances in which we fix the hate of.
Yeah, there's more than one, like we learned about Friday night eating and so on, yes.
There's more than one way to fix other than wiping out.
But there's more than one fixing, not that there's more than one, right. They're all part of it. So, he hasn't explained it yet, but it's going to be understood as we go along. So says Reb Shlomo, page 192, Purim ein resha ba'olam klal. On Purim, there's no evil in the world at all.
Why does Russia not Russian?
Because it means evil. Rasha is an evil person, Resha is evil. B'chol ha'moadim, and on all the holidays, hasimcha shelanu mugbelet. Our joy is limited. כמו שהגמרא אומרת, like the Gemara says, שהכהן הגדול היה שולח שליחים במועדים, that the high priest would send messengers during the holidays, לבדוק שהכל בסדר, to make sure that everything is in order. In other words, that people don't get carried away with the simcha. In other words, that we have a mitzvah, v'samachta b'chagecha, to rejoice on your holiday, right? But on all the holidays, there were shlichim to make sure that people weren't just, that it wasn't going into debauchery, that people weren't just getting drunk, and so on. In other words, be joyous, but keep it within limits. Avalov Purim. But this was not the case on Purim. Purim hu b'li gvul. Purim is without limitations. Hu ein sofi, it is infinite. Right, like the Gemara says that chayav v'nish l'b'sumit Purim, a person should get so drunk on Purim that he doesn't know the difference between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. Right? In other words, there's no distinction, right? You don't know the difference between blessed is Mordechai, cursed is Haman, like what's going on. So what Reb Shlomo is basically saying is that means that the joy of Purim is a joy that's without limits. Okay? Now, Reb Shlomo himself used to interpret that Gemara not as meaning that you should actually get drunk on alcohol. He would interpret it as meaning that you should get drunk on Purim, that the holiday itself should be so joyous that you were drunk from the joy of the holiday.
If this is the case, the Purim comes out on Erev Shabbos. It is not possible a person can be so drunk that it will carry over into the Shabbos.
Yeah, it is possible. So you're asking how? So there are people that will have their Purim Suda Friday morning.
Shushan Purim.
On Shushan Purim,
Morning. I see. You can have the
Suda in the morning.
All day.
You can have the Suda all day, and others will have the Suda in the afternoon, like usual. And when Shabbos comes, if they're too drunk to make Kiddush, they'll go to sleep, but they'll make Kiddush after.
On this topic, I didn't know that one can have the Suda for breakfast, let's say.
You can have the
Or
Suda
does one
after Megillah reading. Yeah, you can have the Suda.
Does one have to have meat at the
On Purim, you have to have meat. You have to have flesh. Yeah. It's the one meal of the year that you actually have to, even like that that it says you should have something fleshy. Yeah.
Slicha, Elef Alafim, what do you do? Because you're a vegetarian.
Somebody brings me some.
Wait, I'm a vegetarian.
Somebody, not totally.
Yeah.
Somebody brings me some meat. Or I go and get.
It's the one.
I have a friend that's
It's the one Suda
That's
that,
that
like you specifically.
that it specifically says that you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Korban Pesach is also made.
Yeah, but that's not a Suda Yom Tov. It's just Korban Pesach. Yeah.
Shushan Purim, you read the Megillah
Yes.
in the morning?
Yeah. We in
Yerushalayim.
Yerushalayim we read the Megillah, and we're going to read the Megillah Thursday
So
night
you
and
read
Friday
the
morning.
Megillah Wednesday night?
No, Thursday
Outside of
night.
Yerushalayim.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he says like this. He
Thank
says,
you.
"Atem yadim ma abaya ba'olam." You know what the problem is in the world? Shekol abaya shehi. The problem is shekol hazman mitpashrim al dvarim. We're always making compromises. Eitz hadat hu k'tzat tov v'k'tzat ra. The tree of knowledge is a little bit good, it's a little bit bad. Anachnu smechim in k'tzat tov lanu. We're happy if things are a little bit good for us, right? Im tavru al historia shel haolam, if you study history of the world, tiru she'af echad lo ha'ez lenatzot levatel et hareshut mehaolam. You'll see that nobody ever had the guts to try and get rid of evil from the world. Kol hazman mitpashrim. We're always making compromises, right? Like I gave you the example, like people are, if the crime rate isn't beyond a certain percentage, people are generally, satisfied. Like people sort of accept a certain amount of crime rate, right? So, but is anybody going out and saying we don't want to have any evil, right? Ki kol kach kal litpasher. It's so much easier to just make a compromise. So much easier to just compromise, right?
I met somebody who said that a cab driver on the way to Gatwick, and right before I came here, and he said that we should stop race violence completely, and I argued with him.
Okay. So, אבל בפורים אנחנו לא מוכנים להתפשר יותר. Purim, we're not willing anymore, we're not ready to make compromises. אני לא רוצה להתפשר עוד בחיים הפרטיים שלי. I don't want to live a life of compromises. ואני גם רוצה שיפסיקו להתפשר בכל העולם כולו, and I don't want the world to, and I also want the world to stop making compromises. מי שלא חווה את החוויה של פורים אמיתי, someone who has not experienced the experience of a real Purim, כמעט בטוח, it's almost sure שהוא לא יודע מה זה יהדות. It's almost certain that he doesn't know what Judaism is really about. Gival Purim is so awesome. So he's just putting out a whole bunch of ideas so far. The Purim אנחנו ממש קרובים אחד לשני. Purim, we're like really close to one another. הרשות הקטנה שאנחנו מתפשרים עליה, the little bit of evil that we always compromise with, לא נותנת לנו להתקרב למשפחה, לילדים. That little bit of evil doesn't allow us to be really close with our families, with our children. היא לא נותנת לנו להתקרב לכל העולם. It doesn't allow us to be really close with the whole world. כי תמיד יש איזושהי רשות קטנה שגורמת לנו להתרחק. Because there's always a little bit of evil inside of me that keeps me just a certain distance from you. Right?
It's not completely clear.
So what that means is let's say Didier asks me for a favor, right? And if I was really, really close with you, like totally, right? So then there would be no question. I would do it, okay? But let's say, for example, I'm not a bad guy, right? But yesterday I asked him for a favor. And he sort of hesitated, let's say. Not him, this is not, is okay, he's a tzaddik, okay? But let's say I asked somebody for a favor and they didn't quite do it with their whole heart, right? So what happens today when they ask me for a favor? What is likely to happen?
You won't be running.
I won't be running to do it, right? That means that, and do I beat myself up for that?
No.
No, I don't beat myself up for that. I don't say, oh, this is terrible, right? So what am I in fact doing? I'm making a compromise. I'm compromising with myself, right? I'm saying, it's not great, it's not the best, but like they say in Yiddish, nicht gefährlich, right? Not so terrible, right? So accepting that compromise is keeping me from being completely close with you. It's the parents and children, husbands and wives, right? We have a little bit of we compromise, like I'm not. You got the book, right? We're on page 192. We're on page 192. Okay. we you would imagine that for your children you're going to do everything, right? But then a lot of parents don't, right? And they still consider themselves to be good parents, right? I'm not talking about spoiling them, but they still consider themselves to be good parents, but there's a little bit of evil. We're not totally 100% generous, right? It's like when I was teaching the elementary school, I could see on the kids' faces in the morning who got breakfast because with love, and who got breakfast because the parents were afraid of the social worker, saying, like, they gave their kids breakfast because they didn't want to be in trouble, but they would rather have just stayed in bed and slept, type of thing. So, but what's being described over here is a phenomenon that's true for pretty much all of humanity. We're making certain compromises all the time, and those compromises are keeping us from being really close to each other, right? Kulam yadim. So everybody knows, last paragraph on 192. Kulam yadim shepurim hu yoter gavoa miyom kippurim. Everybody knows that Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. They say Yom Kippurim. That Yom Kippurim is like Purim. but it's not quite, right? So Purim is higher. So in what sense is it higher? B'Yom HaKippurim, and Yom Kippur, Yesh Seir LaAzazel. There's the goat that's sent after Azazel. V'ani Omer LaKadosh Baruch Hu, and what that service is about is basically saying to God, Tamid yeh rishut ba'olam, there's always going to be some evil in the world. Tamid yeh mashu lo beseder, there's always going to be something that's not quite right. But I'm going to try to be as good as I can. With Purim lumatzot, and Purim, in other words, and that sacrifice, the Seir Azazel, that sacrifice is sort of like saying, I don't want the evil, but I'm accepting that it's there. Like, you know, I'm not 100% ready to give it up completely. In other words, let's explain it like this. In theory, when you bring a sacrifice for, let's say, a sin offering, the korban chatat, okay? In theory, the person bringing the sin offering, he asks him, are you going to do the sin again? Or are you sure that you're never going to do it again? Now, I was going to say, I would definitely like to commit myself not to doing it again, right? But as long as the person knows that if he does it again, he can bring another sacrifice, right? As long as he knows that he can bring another sacrifice afterwards, he's sort of like not necessarily making a total commitment that I'm never going to do this again. But let's say, for example, you know that you're never going to have a chance to bring another sacrifice of atonement. You have this one-time sacrifice, right? Then you sort of better get your act together and make sure that you're committing yourself to never doing this again, right? So he's saying the fact that there are no sacrifices, Yom Kippur is a sacrifice because of our evil or because of evil. But if you know that but Purim, there are no sacrifices. That basically means there can't be evil. There better not be any evil. Because it's not about doing something wrong and then bringing a sacrifice. It's about like mamish, no evil. Because there is no sacrifice. What did you want to say?
Tanucha. I read about something. Tanuch, like God gives people the opportunity to to make repentance through through like situational
right. Okay. So what are you asking?
I'm asking. The sacrifice wouldn't be that.
It's part of tshuva. It's part of tshuva. It's part of repentance. Okay. But the point that Reb Shlomo is making over here is that even when people are doing tshuva, they're not going into a place of, or they're not necessarily going into a place of like, I'm never going to tell a lie again. Understand? Like they're not going into a place of no more compromises, no lies, period. Right? So, but if you were to know that you've got to be totally real, right? then you're not going to make any compromise. You're not going to make any compromises. Why is this such a difficult thing for everyone to understand?
It's hard.
Why? Because we're not used to that kind of living, right? We're not used to that.
Can anybody say what I'm going to do? How am I going to say I'm not going to do something tomorrow?
How can you say that? And how? Never mind. How am I going to say I'm not going to do a transgression? How are you capable of saying I'm not compromising anymore?
With yourself, you can. But
Are you
not-
capable of in other words?
And so if I blow it, I blow it. But at least I can try.
You can try, right?
Yeah.
But are you ready to say I'm not going to compromise at all whatsoever with everything I'm going to say is going to be absolutely true. You know, you heard the story. This guy applies for a job, and the guy interviewing him says, "So what's your best quality?" So he says, "I always tell the truth." So he says, "I told you this one."
Yeah, it's a good one.
So he says, "Well, that's very good." So he says, "I don't care what you think." Right? Yes.
Our whole life experience is that
Compromise.
nobody's perfect. Nothing is perfect. No, I'm not perfect. That's the way I grew up. That's what my experiences told me. And what you're saying now is, I can reach beyond that and say,
That's what Reb
I
Shlomo
can
was
touch
saying.
perfection in my moral. I will never do anything wrong.
Well,
no
hopefully,
one's doing anything wrong. No one's
hopefully,
going to do anything evil. There won't be any evil. It doesn't sound like this world. It sounds like some other
And
place.
that's the whole thing. why
that's
we
the
can't-
point that we're talking about. That's exactly what we're talking about. In other words, at Purim is when we say that you get so drunk that you don't know the difference between Christus, Haman, and blessed is Mordechai. In other words, you're trying to get to some kind of a place where like evil is completely wiped out.
How can
He's going to talk about how. We didn't get to any house
how
yet.
can one compare Purim and Yom Kippur? The root of the word is different. Purim is it's poor.
Well, we have, which means lottery, and Kippurim is kapara, right? There's a concept that when words are phonetically similar, that also means that there's some kind of relationship between them. Grammatically, your question is perfect. They're two different words, okay? But when words share similar letters, there already is some similarity.
It's poor from Hebrew or from Persian. The word poor.
Yes, I once heard about that. No, this is actually a Persian word. The Megillah says "Hipil pu hu hagoral." In Hebrew, it's goral. But still, the word made it into the Tanakh.
Yeah.
Okay, so he says we're in the last paragraph, right? Kulam yodim, I'm reading that sentence again. Kulam yodim shepurim hu yoter gavua miyom kippurim. Everybody knows that Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. Yom Kippurim yesh seir l'azazel. On Yom Kippur there's an acceptance of evil, but we're sacrificing not to have any evil. And I'm telling God, there's always going to be some evil in the world. There's always going to be something not right. I'm going to try to be as much better as possible. The Purim whereas on Purim, there is no sacrifice l'Azazel. ביום הכיפורים אני עומד לפני השם ומתוודה על חטאי. Purim, I'm standing in front of God and I'm confessing my transgressions. אבל בפורים אני כל כך קדוש ומקודש Purim, I'm so holy and so sanctified. Mi bichlal zocher chataim. Who even remembers transgressions?
Is that true?
Wait 1 second. ואתם יודעים שכאשר אני אוהב מישהו מאוד, and everybody, and you know that when I love somebody very much, כשאנחנו ביחד, so when I'm together with that person, אני לא רואה בו דברים רעים. I don't see anything bad in them. Okay? So that's what he's saying, the Chol. Understand?
But is that true of all the Purim and Eco Papa? I'm Purim and my holy.
He's saying that he's talking about the way it should be.
It should be.
Okay. In other words, conceptually, that's what it's about.
This is like us to Hashem, that we love Hashem, we also be bad in Hashem.
And with each other too.
Okay.
See, the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitch Rebbe, in his teaching on Ahavat Yisrael and loving your fellow Jew, so the Torah says, "We have to love your fellow like you love yourself." Right? So he says, "What does it mean like you love yourself?" But suppose, for example, you weren't as good or as perfect as you wanted to be today. But at the end of the day, you're sitting down and having your meal. Sorry. And you're offered, there's a nice piece of dessert on the table. Dessert, chocolate cake, whatever is your favorite. And do you say to yourself, I'm not going to have it because I don't deserve it? You have it anyway, right? You have it, right? Yeah. Like everybody else, you'll have it, right? But suppose, for example, somebody else comes in and they're not as good with you as you'd like them to be, and you feel obligated that you have to give them something to eat. But do you feel that you have to give them dessert also? Do you feel obligated that you have to share your dessert? No, right? In other words, for your own self, your love is so strong. If you're a normal person, you're not talking about self-hating people, but a normal person loves himself so much that his love for himself overlooks his faults, right? He might want to improve his character traits because he thinks it's good for him to do so, right? But it's not like he can't stand himself, right? It's not like he can't stand himself. But for the other guy, oh, I can't stand this guy. He didn't even do anything to you, but I just don't want him around. I don't like him, right? So you're not getting up and running to give him dessert, right? So that's what he's saying over here. He's saying is that right? Love is blinding, right? Love, when you love somebody, when you love something, you become blind to the possible defects that go with it, right? When you love yourself, so you're pretty blind to your faults. Not that you don't know about them, you're just blind to them, right? When you really love another person, doesn't mean that they don't have faults. It means that you don't see them.
Well, you don't see them as so bad. You love them anyway.
Yeah, maybe you choose to overlook them.
You don't see it. You don't see the negative.
It's healthy people.
I don't know about that. I think in real love you can see the faults and still love them.
I didn't say that you can't. But normally,
You see them with a positive
when
way
you
of looking at it.
really no, normally that's why I was giving the example about self-love. You're not even looking at your faults.
not looking at them.
Okay, that's what he's saying. He's
Okay.
saying that when you're
That's a good
really,
way of putting it.
that's what he's saying there. When you're really close with somebody, when you really love somebody, you don't see the faults. Okay, the love and the closeness is so powerful that you actually don't see the faults. Okay, so Kulam Yadim, everyone knows, chapter 193. Shachet Eitz Hadat Hevi Mavet Laolam, that the sin of the tree of knowledge brought death to the world. Mavet, what is death? Perusho Shakol Nigmar. It means that everything is finished. She'ein ein sofiyut. There's no eternity. There's no infinity. Atem yadim ma Amalek ha'oyev shelanu omer. You know what Amalek, our enemy, our arch enemy, says? Betach shata yachol liyot tov liyom achad. Yeah, I'm sure you can be good for one day. Yomayim, maybe 2 days. But you're always going to come back to being the way you were before. Okay? You're always going to come back to being the way you were before. In other words, the Amalek is saying that you're stuck in the evil. You're never going to get beyond it. You might get out of it for a day, right? I mean, we all have that experience, right? Like, you decide, that's it, from now on, I'm going to be good and righteous and so on and so on. And maybe it lasts for a day, right? And then we're back. So Amalek, what does Amalek say? Amalek says, listen, there is no infinity of goodness. It's just like you're going to be stuck in this all the time.
It's easier, isn't it? Because it's familiar.
It's familiar. It's easier to live with compromises. It's familiar, right? It's sort of and we sort of like we say that look, the Torah is not about perfect people. The Torah is about people working towards perfection. So you understand, it's a little bit paradoxical what's going on over here, because on the one hand, we are accepting the fact that we're not achieving perfection, right? On the other hand, what Reb Shlomo is saying is that this one holiday of Purim is about mamish saying, that's it, I don't want any evil whatsoever ever again. Okay? That's, to tell you the truth, a lot of people have noticed in this community, like Purim gets so high that the day or 2 days after Purim is a real letdown for a lot of people.
Says what?
It's a real letdown.
Oh, yeah.
That was Hanukkah.
Huh?
That was Hanukkah.
Hanukkah was like that too. Yeah. In other words, you're going to such a high consciousness, right? And then the next day, what? We're back here again, right? We're back here again. Or Shabbos and then Sunday, right? So keep in mind that the avoided, that the work is what the work is about is there's still work to be done. Understand? So thank God for Shabbos, thank God for the holidays, thank God for these things. Like they remind us of how it can be and how it should be, right? And then we have to take that with us into the weekdays and say, okay, we're gonna do it, right? And particularly Purim, where the arch enemy is Amalek. Amalek is the arch enemy, and Amalek is saying, you're always going to be my customer. There's always going to be evil. You're always going to have some evil in you, and so on. And Purim, we're celebrating, we're saying, no, even that is not true. We're going to get past all evil, right? And you've seen on Purim, you see people are like crazily in love with each other, right? And we're doing all these things like Shalach Manas, and we do all these customs that we have in Purim. It's about like really being together, really being one, really being united. And you have to be careful the next day that don't let yourself get down, because the next day we still have to deal with reality. Okay? So, right? Sometimes you know something like deep inside. But you know that in order to live with that truth, you have to be ready to make huge sacrifices. Okay? What do we usually do? We make compromises. Right? So Purim is about, like, I want to get in touch with that place where there's no compromise, where it's like no, not compromising with evil anymore. I'm not. I'm not. Like, I really want to love you. I really want to do everything I can for you, and I'm not willing to compromise to do less than that. Okay. So, like, this lesson started out with the words that Purim, every other holiday you can celebrate, even though you might be a little bit superficial, a little bit shallow, because it's the holiday doesn't so much demand. The holiday basically demands, for example, Pesach, you have to eat matzah. So you know that you ate matzah, you celebrated Pesach. You understand? Pesach night. It's sure there's a lot of deep inner meaning to matzah, but in fact, you did the mitzvah, you ate matzah, you did the mitzvah. You understand? Purim, it's a lot more difficult to really be in it, because you have to sort of really be real. Okay. So continue Rosh Hashanah tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sure.